I'm sure as a parent you are complaining of cold, cough, fever, wheezing, and it's like almost synonymous because we're experiencing rain in every part of India. Trust me, if you are experiencing this, do share in the comments below the one that is absolutely giving you sleepless nights, because being a parent, I totally empathize with you. These respiratory ailments are just one part of it. As parents, we also see a lot of behavioral shifts in children. It could be mood swings, tantrums, it could be being strong willed, it could be being stubborn. And I would say, as a parent, I would trust nobody else but an expert to guide us through this journey. Very fortunate, we have two incredible experts and doctors with us today. One, we have Dr. R. Parshuram, who's a senior consultant pediatrician and neonatologist based in Mumbai with 33 years of experience. He has been associated with SRCC Hospital, Raheja Hospital, Surya Hospital, and we have Dr. Neeta Nayak, who's a pediatric neurologist and developmental pediatrician based in Mumbai again with over 25 years of experience. She has expertise in epilepsy and neurodevelopmental disorders. She's the founder and director of EN1 Neuroservices. Thank you both for being with us today and being our guiding light.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Parshuram, first one for you. What are the additional respiratory symptoms, and during seasonal variations, what is your guidance to parents?
In addition to the symptoms that you have already mentioned, we also find that children have problems like congested nose, congested ears, ear pain, decreased physical activity, tiredness, alteration in the sleep pattern, and fussy behavior. And our guidance to parents would be first to ensure that the child is well hydrated and to encourage the intake of sips of warm water orally. Second, reiterate the importance of personal hygiene, because in times like this, we should teach the child to wash their hands regularly and also to cover their nose and mouth, especially when they are coughing and sneezing. It's also better to avoid crowded places during the monsoon season. Third, we should monitor the child's sleep pattern, because many times the child becomes irritable and is not able to sleep properly. If possible, inculcate a sleep discipline in the child. Fourth, as far as the food intake is concerned, many times the child will refuse to eat food, especially on the day one of illness. Let the child decide whether he would like to eat or and what he would like to eat. Don't force feed the child at least on day one of the illness. After the second day, if this problem persists, you can entice or tempt the child with their favorite foods with healthy options. Small quantities of food can be given to build up enough calories. Keep monitoring the child's temperature to see if the child is getting fever so that adequate measures can be taken. A balanced diet containing all the nutrients in adequate proportion is the best defense against not only respiratory infections but all infections in general.
Thank you, doctor, for reinforcing some of these things, because I know as mums and especially as parents, we get really confused about how to go about it, and sometimes we need to reinforce and reinforce these things for us to know that this is normal and this is going to happen to your child.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Nayak, coming to you, it's very normal for children when they're experiencing cold, cough, fever, or other respiratory issues to have mood swings, have tantrums, have loss of appetite. And I know that as a parent, how I respond in that moment, even if I have had sleep deprived nights, will determine how they behave in the future. So how would you guide parents to go about changing their perspective and responding correctly?
So one of the golden rules for behavior when we want to shape the behavior of the child is to ensure that you do positive reinforcement. which means when the child is behaving the way you want the child to behave, you praise him, you participate in the behavior, you say some good words, you enjoy his behavior, you show him that you like it, and that's the way the child gets motivated to repeat the behavior. Alternatively, if there's a negative behavior which you are not very you think that you don't like it, or you don't do not reinforce with reaction. It is very important that don't give a strong reaction. You can choose to ignore it if the behavior is not really problematic, or if it's minor problematic behavior, or give a timeout if it is a major problematic behavior. So many a times it happens that parents reinforce the negative behavior by say don't do this, don't do that, or reacting to it, giving a lot of attention to it. The child is almost always seeking attention. He really doesn't mind whether it's a positive attention or negative attention. Positive attention is always better because it ensures that the child repeats that behavior and learns that strategy.
That's very reassuring, because I think sometimes as parents we are already so time pressed, or we are feeling that they are suffering. But you're absolutely right when you say that it's attention seeking, and if when you're ill, if you're not going to ask for attention, then when? Dr. Parshuram, over to you. As a parent, of course, it's very upsetting to see your child get cold, cough, fever, wheezing, congested nose. We spend nights keeping them upright so they get at least a few hours of sleep, and we get a few hours of sleep. Every parents, how do you comfort a child through those sleepless nights with those bouts of cold, cough, fever?
See, as far as fever is concerned, if the child is active, alert, playing, eating, and drinking, one should not worry. Because always remember that this fever is helping your child to fight the infection. So don't go overboard trying to bring down the fever in the first 1 or 2 days. Second is there are some do's and don'ts which can be followed as general instructions. One is ensure that the child gets adequate rest, sleep, and relaxation. Second, see that baby gets small but frequent amounts of healthy food being administered so that nutrition and calorie intake is maintained. Third is hydration. Adequate hydration with intake of warm water, milk, or even some juices is allowed so that the child is well hydrated. Fourth is keep the room temperature as comfortable as possible to the child, not very hot, not very cold, so that the child is comfortable. Fifth is keep the child in comfortable clothing and bed linen. You can use either singlets or cotton cloths and a cotton bed sheet to cover the child, and if possible try to change these cloth and bed sheets regularly. Use a cloth with a comfortable temperature to clean the face and the hands of the child, and ensure that the child is overall well protected, especially at night. Monitor the child frequently by just peeping in and see whether he is comfortable. It's also important to give steam inhalation because it helps in decongestion of the nose and the ear, and some symptoms like ear pain can be avoided if they are decongested. In spite of this, if you are worried or if the symptoms worsen, then don't hesitate to consult your doctor.
Right.
There are some important don'ts also which you can follow. One is avoid anything that will do rapid cooling of the child because it will bring down the temperature fast and may cause shivering, which is also not advisable. Second is avoid the use of hot water bottles because many times people tend to use hot water bottles. Third is if there is somebody who is smoking in the house, nobody should smoke in the house in this vicinity because smoking can also aggravate the cough.
Dr. Nayak, you mentioned, and I'm sure a lot of parents, we've already had Dr. Parshuram talk about how children sometimes lose appetite and they're reluctant to eat, and we should largely keep them on liquids. But I know as a parent, you know that if you feel like your child hasn't eaten, they're not going to recover, and then you're going to try every resort and medium to get them to eat, and that would lead to a distraction, and distraction to us today has almost become equivalent to using screens and gadgets. And I would love to ask you that when your child is not well, how do you manage this situation? Because I know that increased screen time during this time can have harmful effects on a child who's healing. So what would your take be?
So let's talk about the harmful effects of the screen. Typically, the brain is very plastic in the early childhood, that is 0 to 6 years of age. So at that time, if you give excess screen and passive entertainment, a lot of time it can lead to poor synaptic connections, and it can lead to delays like speech delay or delay in interpersonal relationship or interpersonal communication in the child. At a later age, when the child grows little older, or maybe at the age of 6 years or above, excessive use of screen can give rise to emotional issues or mood swings due to excessive use of screen, use of social media, obsession with likes, obsession with gaming, obsessions with general seeing information, and overloading of information in the child brain, where he starts feeling small, or he starts feeling like not an identity, or he may start relating to the identities. We see a lot of children who relate to the identities which they see on the screen. So there, further, when the child grows older, we also see that the child many a times loses the skills, social skills or language skills or communication skills which the child has developed if the child is excessively using the screen or excessively using any form of screen entertainment. So according to the IAP guidelines, that is Indian Academy of Pediatrics guidelines, the exposure of screen is also, they have defined how many hours of screen that the child should use. So according to the guidelines, below the age of 2 years, the child should not use the screen at all. Between the age of 2 to 5 years, it is 1 hour. 5 to 10 years, it is 2 hours of maximum screen per day. And after the age of 10 years, it has to be modified, or it has to be manipulated according to the requirement of the child, the school, parents, etc. So unlimited or unsupervised use of screen in young children is definitely a big no-no, because of the reasons that I have already said. And so when you're going back to your first question, that during illness, how do you prevent use of screen, is one of the important way of preventing use is the parent will have to be with the child.
Yeah.
If the parent is with the child, parent spends time with the child and uses other methods of keeping the child entertained or engaged for that matter, then the use of screen can automatically reduce, the need of screen can reduce, the addiction to the screen can reduce. Screen is only used as by the child as a substitute for a lot of interpersonal interaction with the child may be missing, and so if better interpersonal interactions provided, the child may not use it, provided he is not addicted. So you don't have to allow the child to use it so much that he can get addicted, and the addiction can happen very fast. So the
Right.
parents have to really take care of the screen. It is one of the biggest epidemic causing device, or cause.
So, doctor, how do you deal with tantrums related to screens?
One of the ways of dealing with tantrums is not giving in to the tantrums at all. So child will throw tantrums only if it is effective. A child will stop throwing tantrums if he knows that it is not of any use. So when the parent has to be very firm, and the parent has to not give in to the tantrum, maybe distract the child, of course, if it is in a social situation or causing some embarrassment, or just distract the child so that the pain and trouble the child is going through of throwing a tantrum can be avoided. But yeah, giving a screen in response to the tantrum, every time he throws a tantrum and parent gives a screen, then it is you're setting a wrong precedence, because then the child knows that if I throw a tantrum, I will get this screen. Another important problem that can occur if there's an excessive screen time is if the child, because of the excessive use of screen, his physical movement decreases, and therefore he can be prone to obesity, and he can have posture related issues. Using laptop in a lying down position or sometimes in a very reclined position can also give rise to some stooping posture in a child, and it can reduce the basal metabolic rate. If the child is really not moving as much he should move, giving rise to obesity. Sometimes sleep issues can occur if there's excessive use of screen, if there's excessive stimulation due to screen. But so again, a golden rule is that the child should stop using screen before around before sleeping time. So probably at least 1 hour before his sleeping time. So to avoid food related tantrums, what is more important is do not introduce junk food in the first place. If the child is already introduced to junk food and you want to change his habits, it is important that you introduce healthy food to him, make the healthy food options available to him, stay calm. Reacting to the child may create anxiety in the child. Stay calm, don't try to feed the child, don't get anxious that the child will not eat and therefore immediately offer junk food. You be a role model, always eat healthy food. The child will learn by observing his parent, and don't overfeed the child. So don't keep frequently offering food. Let the child feel hungry, let the child come to you when he feels hungry, and then you give a healthy food option.
Dr. Parshuram, you mentioned about, stay connected with your HCP and reach out to them. What is the point? Because I see sometimes parents being very delayed about it or thinking I can handle this. What's that time and moment when it is important to ask for that intervention?
Yeah, I would say the red flags where you should immediately reach out to the HCP is a child who is looking paler than normal. If your hands and feet of the baby are colder than normal, if there is a bluish tinge to the mouth or lips, or if the child is having breathlessness even at rest, or if there is an object in the throat such as a foreign body, if the baby is having drowsiness, or there is coughing with blood, nausea and vomiting, neck pain, neck stiffness, or whooping cough. These are the symptoms where you should not wait and immediately contact the HCP.
Doctor, how would you describe a whooping cough?
Whooping cough is a typical sound that is emanating from deep inside, and it's quite a loud type of cough with a lot of echoing. And in the olden days, it was caused by a bacterium called as Bordetella pertussis. But there are other viral infections which can also cause a cough with a whooping sound.
Dr. Nayak and Dr. Parshuram, you both addressed this, and I think he mentioned this, which is the child should not go back when they have a respiratory problem with cold, cough, fever, or pain or any of that. They should not go back to crowded places. And for children, the obvious is going back to school. So what would you recommend is after how many days can they go back? Because obviously they're passing on the infection.
If the fever as a symptom is there, then don't send the child to school. Because fever, as long as it is there, means the body is still having the active infection, and it is risky for the child and also for other children in the school because they will also contract that infection.
Right.
Otherwise, use your parental instincts. As the parent, you are the best judge to know that this child right now is looking as normal as he was before the onset of the illness. So if he is eating well, drinking properly, playing around, and is by and large comfortable, then you can send him back to school. If at some point of time the child is showing reluctance to go to school or is obviously symptomatic, then don't be in a hurry.
As parents, it makes us really weak and vulnerable to see our children go through respiratory illnesses, which is almost synonymous to monsoon months like cough, cold, fever, wheezing cough, like Dr. Parshuram mentioned. And of course, along with that comes so many behavioral issues. And as parents, sometimes we're also rushed to send them back, but we need to ensure that they have recovered completely, wholly, the infection has settled, and they've taken the right medication, right nutrition that supports them in their recovery, and of course the right amount of care and attention that they need. And of course, let's not rush into sending them back to daily routine, but let's give them that due with all the care that they need. And of course, trust, like I always say, trust experts in guiding you through these illnesses.